Father, we just pray that you heal our country and help us to show love to those around us. Help us to also reach out to those that are less fortunate. And Father, we're thankful that you allow us to be stewards for the Glynn County Water and Sewer Authority, and just help us to realize the customers that we serve and their needs. And thank you for the staff that helps that to be possible. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
There's no public comment period. The first item is minutes from the July 20th, 22 Facilities Committee meeting. Do I have a?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor? Motion carries. Next item is Pump Station 4044 property acquisition. Mr. Domney.
Thank you, Chairman. In your materials, you'll see an appraisal for the parcel that we're proposing to purchase from Prime South. Pump Station 4044 is in need of rehabilitation in the current location, which is in front of the, I guess it's still Payless Shoes.
It was Payless, it's now Brakes for Less.
Brakes for Less. It's not suitable, nor could we negotiate to sell the additional land needed to suit the rehabilitation. Therefore, the staff proposed relocating the station to the parcel immediately east of the existing parcel, which is owned by Prime South Bank. We had an appraisal and survey done. The new parcel will consist of 0.029 acres and will include an access easement through the parking lot of Prime South Bank. Parcel is already encumbered by existing easements, which will benefit the proposed use and diminishes the appraised value. The appraisal was found to be $4,725. The staff has reviewed the survey, the deed, and the appraisal and finds the pricing to be reasonable and acceptable. A copy of the survey, the deed, and the appraisal are attached, and staff recommends purchasing the parcel from Prime South Bank at the appraised value.
Do I have a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion that the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission Facilities Committee forward to the full commission the deed and appraisal with a recommendation for approval and authorization of the chairman to execute any and all documents necessary to complete the purchase.
Second.
There's a motion second. Any questions?
I have a question, comments. I think we had several months ago some discussion about this site, and kind of refresh me on that, the discussion where we ended it, and now we're at the point of closing the purchase.
Why don't you walk us through the current setup, where we're gonna move it to, and what this updated pump station is going to serve?
Okay.
Also, while you're doing that, can you show us where all the existing easements are? And will we need all of those easements with the new location of the pump station, or could we swap those easements for what we're paying for this appraised value or something?
Certainly. So, Commissioners, this is the Pump Station 4044 relocation, we call it, project. Pump Station 4044 is just a little south of the mall area and does serve that greater mall area, including as far north as Chapel Crossing, where there are two new apartment and townhome developments going on, currently under construction. 4044 will serve those developments. And it goes as far west as behind Home Depot, all the way as far west as there. So it's a fairly large area. Currently it's a very short force main. Zoom back in. I'll turn off the ortho image to make it a little faster. So Payless, former Payless, now it's Brakes for Less now. Pump Station 4044 existing, and then the short force main that discharges to this manhole out in Altima Connector right away right now. What we're going to do is relocate the station itself. Now the structure that's there now for the wet well is going to be converted to essentially a manhole. We're going to rehab that, get it structurally sound, gravity flow it to this new parcel that's going to be wholly on the Prime South Bank parcel. This little station here that you see, 4044B, the red just in the alpha code there, just denotes that's a private station within the R4044 basin. That station serves a portion of the commercial development back in here, Shane's Rib Shack, and that kind of corner of that commercial development, Publix, et cetera, all drain down towards here. And it is a grinder station. Currently, that grinder station is in pretty poor shape. Key in working with Prime South and obtaining this parcel or the negotiations of the parcel and whatnot, we did work with the property manager for these commercial entities here, who was very excited to learn there's a possibility we can take their grinder station and eliminate it and gravity flow it directly into this new pump station. And that's what we're going to do. That's what we're designing to do. So it does help out that commercial entity or those commercial entities there with this 4044 relocation. And it's the existing structure. It's been slated in the master plan for rehab and replacement for some time. Structurally, it's in pretty poor shape.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but also, we don't actually own any property at 4044. That's actually in the public right-of-way. So we are extremely site limited to what we can do at the current location.
The, right now, the easement, this is the Altona connector right-of-way here, and then we have an offset easement
Right.
that parallels. That's what our station's wholly within right now. And that will stay the same. We still need that easement because we need the gravity, the ability to have assets drain into the new location. So the new parcel is going to be here in this corner, and you know, it will
So you've got the
supersede some of those easements.
the public
that portion
sewer
of it.
easement and then the private sewer easement kind of come into that corner together. Those are the easements we were talking about.
Yes.
And the current one will turn into just a manhole, there'll be nothing essentially visible. Because right now, it really is kind of an eyesore as you come around that corner.
Great point. So, Commissioner, so the, yeah, the current owner of the Brakes for Less business is excited as well because we have a SCADA antenna, we have above ground control panel.
Right.
And it is in their line of sight, you know, as people are looking at their, the front of their business, that's what they see first. So, right, once this project is, as part of this project, all that'll be brought to ground level. It'll basically be a gasketed manhole lid on top of it.
But we'll have the same, we'll have some of that stuff on Prime South's view now, right?
Correct, correct. All within a fence, and Mr. Dorman can speak to their, part of the discussions with Prime South was a commitment to keeping it looking nice, which we do with all, you know, our assets. We commit to that, but especially here right at the corner of the bank's property, they wanted to make sure that we were committed to keeping it landscaped properly and keeping the fence looking good.
It is gonna look like the Sonic station?
Unfortunately, Sonic is not in the best location, so we can't quite mask it like we'd like to with a fence. That's why it's open and you can see the inner workings, all the above ground features that have to be a part of it. And that's largely due to the line of sight for people turning in and out.
But the layout should be very similar to what we have at 4021, correct?
It will. It'll be similar. It'll be similar.
Just fenced.
Fenced, right.
Fenced and
yeah,
landscaped.
yeah.
So we're tying into the existing force main.
We are going to, we're actually upsizing the force main into the, this piece here, the existing force main. We're going to have a new force main that's going to connect in. This will be abandoned and flow shut with flowable fill.
Okay.
Now, I do want to point out this station is being upgraded with the ability to cover foreseeable growth in the area. We do have a limiting factor here of this 12-inch receiving gravity. Right now, it's not in the works, not funded to upsize that receiving gravity. But this is, we're maximizing the flow that we can push out of this station to take care of all the developments that are happening right now and into the near future. But at some point, if growth continues to grow and the station continues to receive more and more flow, we'll likely have to extend the force main all the way out to the Altama corridor to a larger receiving gravity, which is the 18-inch out there. But that's down the road. Right now, this gets us to where we need to be.
Can I ask about the private grinder station now? We have nothing to do with the maintenance on that or anything.
We do not currently, no, sir.
Okay, but that's gonna be eliminated and just, the flow will just come right into this pump station.
That is correct.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you. Next item is the Glynn County Animal Control Facility Lease, IGA Amendment Number 1. Mr. Dominic?
Yes, sir. Before you is an amendment to the intergovernmental lease agreement for the former animal control facility. As you recall, I believe it was a couple of months ago, we entered into this intergovernmental lease agreement for that facility. The county then approached us and asked if we would be willing to modify that agreement to allow them to occupy the building. Currently, we are only occupying the grounds as a lay-down lot, essentially, storage. So this amendment will allow the county access to the facility and change our lease essentially to a grounds lease.
And I believe their intention is to use this for training purposes for the police department, the building itself.
So that's the only modification, it's just that,
They have access to the building. When it was
Right.
brought for us, just to, hopefully nothing happens, just to be, if we're leasing it, somebody gets injured during training, let's make sure all the legal documents are
Right.
where they need to be in that scenario.
that's good, yeah.
Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion. I move the Brunswick-Glynn County Joint Water and Sewer Commission Facilities Committee forward to the full commission, the amended intergovernmental agreement with Glynn County for the lease of the former animal control facility with the recommendation to approve same.
I'll second the motion.
Question, please. So we modify this to a ground lease. What about access across the ground lease for their employees?
Right. They'll still have ingress and egress.
Okay. And so, are we exposed to any liability for them to have ingress and egress if one of them takes a tumble and falls?
Well, that's a difficult question. I will answer it by saying yes. However, we are protected in several different ways.
If we commit gross negligence, then we're
Right.
probably exposed, but
Well,
normal negligence,
the individuals, right, the individuals with the county that will be on the property, if they slip and fall, they'll be covered by workers' comp. If some other individual falls in the facility, we have immunities which will protect us from suit in that regard. If not, there'll be insurance as well.
okay.
Right now, we're just using the property for storing our meters, is that correct?
Very minimal, yes, sir.
And when will that be finished?
The meter project is slated to be finished by fall of 2023.
And how much of the space, open space, are we using for the meters?
Very low.
Do we have any other usage for that, this at all?
There will be uses shortly. We've still got to get a laydown yard together for transfer switches and everything like that. We've been trying to work it out at Academy Creek, but project continues at Academy Creek, so we haven't got that laid down yet, so we may be moving those out there. And then it also would be a good laydown yard, which if approved today, when they start delivering generators, you gotta have a lot of space. So we're not blessed with a lot of open grass space at our wastewater plants, particularly with Dunbar under
Can
construction.
you pull up a aerial that shows the facility so we know what we're talking about? And how they would be accessing and where we'd be laying down? Their property comes all the way out to 17, doesn't it?
The driveway on 17, yeah.
Connects the-
Yeah, the driveway connects to 17.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the driveway?
Just the driveway, yeah. There's a fence around the back, you
Yeah,
know. from-
yeah, I know the
Yeah.
fence is around the
Yeah.
back, but I wonder if their land comes all the way out.
Probably
there's no
not,
fence.
because I know they're gonna widen 17 there, so.
So this is the Green County Animal Control Facility here.
Okay, does that show the property line, Andrew? Can you zoom in on that?
Let me back up. There's the property line, kind of keep that in your mind.
I can't see what,
The gray line here
okay.
are the property lines.
So it
So
comes
it
all
does
the way
come
out
all
to
the way out.
17, yeah.
Comes all the way out road frontage on 17.
Yeah.
And then there's the main entrance here, which goes across the GDOT right away.
So they got a lot of land outside the building area that's just in woods right now.
Right, that's correct.
And so we actually could occupy all that too if we wanted.
Theoretically, yes, sir. I think we probably want to check with them before we start knocking any of their trees down.
There's lots.
So let's zoom in on that so we see where they're gonna be using for training and where we're using for storage. Because I thought we were gonna use some of that for storage inside too.
We
wasn't
were discussing that. The contractor decided he would rather use it for Connex boxes to sit there as
Right.
wholesale storage and then move it to the location he was previously working at.
But that's that contractor. We got other contractors coming.
Right, I mean, most of the other contractors, I don't think will actually need a office space to work here while they're here.
Wasn't the county doing some rehab inside the building also after the,
At one point they were.
at one point? I don't know if they've finished that or not.
Does our lease have a stop date?
Charlotte,
Sorry, what?
does our lease have a start and stop date on it?
Oh, it's already started.
I know it started, but does it have a stop date, a termination date?
Usually we have them, renewable.
2 years with a termination clause.
Okay.
Okay. And we're 6 months into it?
Yes, sir.
Andrew, you don't see any problems with this?
I didn't see any problems with them doing the training anyway, other than some liability protection, so I just wanted to be sure in case somebody got hurt out there. Training typically comes with some accidents occurring, because people are getting trained on how to do things, and I didn't want us to be on the hook for whatever happened out there if that occurred. But certainly want to support Glynn County PD and their activities.
Right. And there's easy access to the building, so, since it's right on 17, so.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you.
Think that works is big enough if we need a backup plan for something else down the road?
Next item is infrastructure and easement dedications. Mr. Klein?
All right, while they're working to get that pulled up over there, we've got 2 infrastructure and easement dedications. The first one is at the Lanes and Games Bowling Alley up off of 341. They had to actually bore underneath the 341 there in the GDOT right-of-way, so this is the dedication of the water infrastructure in the public right-of-way. As some of you may know, anytime we have a private developer that connects to our system in the public right-of-way, we are actually the permit holder for their work in the public right-of-way. GDOT requires us to be the permit holder on that. So we make sure this is obviously done to standards, because we're the ones that are ultimately on the hook for it, and they've completed the record drawings and dedication documents for that water infrastructure. Would that be accurate, Mr. Klein?
Yes, sir. As Ms. Burrows was saying, so these, I would classify these as pretty routine and normal days business we do around here with, working with private development. And, as he said, this first one is yeah, so we can see exactly what this is.
437 feet of pipe, right?
Yes, sir.
So, as Mr. Burrows said, we brought this across, or the developer brought this across 341 right-of-way, New Jessup Highway, an 8-inch water main. They needed fire protection to get to their new business. So to do that, they brought the 8-inch across, cased, all per DOT and joint water standards. Once they got to the other side, or their side, of 341, teed it off for future expansion to the north, and then they ran it to the south as a 12-inch. Now, they only needed an 8-inch for their needs. We do our best to work with our applicants so we can have mutual benefit. In this case, they agreed to run a 12-inch main instead of the 8 that they needed, and we supplied the valves in this case. So it was a good win-win for all parties. We were able to upsize the 8 to a 12 for future extension up and down 341, and the applicant was able to get the fire protection they needed. And they now have a fire hydrant right there at their doorstep and potable water as well.
Did we participate in any of that cost?
We gave them the valves on the 12. We paid for the 12-inch valves.
Okay, but that's it.
That was it.
They paid for the pipe.
They paid for
Yes,
the pipe.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes we work out these arrangements. Sometimes we provide pipe. Sometimes we pay for valves. Try to balance the cost for the developer.
Okay. And what's the other one? Todd,
Okay,
got another
all
one?
right. And then sewer connection was a simple sewer connection via grinder main. It was only a thing available was a force main. Next is an easement dedication on Hawkins Island, which is about midway on St. Simon's Island. The very northern end, the property owner was doing some Glynn County permitted work. And in the process of that, Joint Water is privy to review. And in this case, we saw the opportunity to clean up a little bit of an issue we had. We have a public sewer main, gravity sewer main, that we own and maintain, but we did not have an easement over. So this easement cleans that up for us. Infrastructure was already existing, so there's no new infrastructure. It's just simply an easement over the existing infrastructure. And those are the two items.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move that the Facilities Committee forward these projects with associated dedications and easement to the full commission for approval and acceptance.
Second.
Motion second. Any other questions? Hearing none. All in favor? Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next item is equipment purchase FEMA funded generators.
Yes, sir. Back in July of 2020, we were awarded a hazard mitigation grant from FEMA in order to purchase 8 fixed generators, 5 of which will be located at water facilities, 3 of which will be located at Academy Creek. The approved total cost for the project is $1.35 million. And as you know, we pay approximately 15 to 20% of that. So our local share would be $203,660. The agreement for this was executed and approved in November of 2020. You see the listing there. Again, these are replacing the 5 water production facility generators, are replacing existing generators at these facilities that were impacted during Hurricane Irma. And the 3 generators current 2 generators at Academy Creek will be replaced, and the addition of a 3rd generator. Currently, not all the buildings and processes at Academy Creek are on generator, so adding a 3rd generator will allow us to do that. We've been working with an electrical engineering design firm on this for a year and a half now. We originally were looking for a turnkey solution where a contractor provided equipment. However, generator lead times are quite high right now. So we then scaled back and said we would purchase the generators up front and then bid once we got closer to delivery on the generators for the actual installation of the projects. We also have submitted an application for approval of additional grant funding for 67 additional transfer switches that we awarded original transfer switch project, and then 5 portable generators that is pending approval. Talking with FEMA, obviously things are costing a lot more today than what was originally estimated. They have seemed to indicate, at least verbally, that they're going to approve these 5 generators, but I do want to note the 5 portable generators, as of this date, has not been approved by FEMA. They were waiting on pricing to be received. We will also need a budget adjustment with FEMA because the 1.35 is about $500,000 short. We have been given assurances verbally, not in writing by FEMA, that that will not be a problem, but I just want to make sure everyone is fully aware of that. We received 2 bids on August 1st for the generators. There's 13 generators total, 8 fixed, 5 portable. The low bid was from Cummings at $1,893,826.19. Our responsibility of this would be between $300,000 and $400,000 at the end of this, assuming FEMA moves forward with the approval of the additional grant funding. Obviously, if you look at the bid sheet, that gives you the lead times for these. The shortest lead time is 52 weeks. So if we order them today, they're not going to be here till next summer. And the big generator at Academy Creek, the 1500 kW generator, is 80-week lead time on it right now. So this is not going to be a quick project, but they will be on order for quite some time. This is what we expected. Talking with suppliers, they estimated at least a year lead time on these materials. So we would recommend to staff moving forward with a award of the purchase to Cummings, and then we will continue to work on the official FEMA approval for the additional funds and the portable generator funding.
Can I have a motion?
I'll move that the Facilities Committee recommend that the full commission approve the purchase of 13 generators with Cummins, Inc. in the amount of $1,893,826.19.
Second.
Motion and second. Any questions?
I have a question. Do we pay for these on delivery, or?
We pay for delivery. There may be a small fee to get them started. And sometimes when they start manufacturing, you have to pay a little bit up front. But we pay for the bulk of it on delivery, and then we would request reimbursement from FEMA.
Then, yeah, I know we pay up front, and then they will.
They reimburse their percentage, and GEMA reimburses the state allotment of that.
Right. And even though we just have verbal confirmation there, I mean, I would imagine this is not a unique situation.
From our understanding, pretty much every project that they've awarded for this hazard mitigation grant program around, every project has come in over budget, so
Right.
that's why they don't want to give budget adjustments till they get actual numbers.
Just in the span of 2 years, it's that much difference.
Well, this will lock in those numbers.
This will lock in the numbers. We'll issue, if this is approved, we issue a purchase order on Friday. Those numbers will be locked in.
Okay.
There is
And-
always the risk, just to make sure everybody's aware, that it doesn't get approved and then we're on the hook for the $500,000 overage for the purchase orders unless we cancel the purchase order. But that's something to keep in mind.
How many days of fuel would be available for each of these units?
The belly tanks are supposed to be 48 hours of fuel.
Okay.
What are we doing with the generators they're replacing?
Most of these generators that they're replacing are probably going to be scrap material when we actually get rid of them. A couple of them are non-functional now, and some of them have been heavily maintained for the last several years. So they're
Near end of
they're
life.
near end of life. Some of these are 40-plus-year-old generators.
And do we have Cummings generators throughout our system too?
We've got, I don't know if we have any Cummings generators currently. We've got a kind of a mixed bag of what's out there right now. I have experience with Cummings generators from previous utilities. I've never had any issues out of them.
What did our electrical consultant say about that?
He was fine. He actually recommended 3. We allowed 3 suppliers in the specification, Caterpillar, Cummings, and MTU. And we had other people that were asked to be approved as equal. Those were reviewed with the electrical engineer and staff, and we decided to stick with the 3 originally started with.
Now, we have a contract with somebody to put in transfer switches right now,
That's correct.
and that's under the same grant, right?
Same grant program, yes, sir.
Is that related to any of these generators?
No, those are all pump stations. These are all water and then Academy Creek, so there's no pump station generators in this.
All right.
Obviously, we, a couple of meetings ago, redid the lease for the 5 portable generators from Yancey, hoping we'd get these in quicker, but if the delivery date on the portables is listed, I believe, 74 weeks, so we'll probably have to redo that contract for another year,
Yeah.
unfortunately, before we can let that go.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you. Next item is contract award on-call boring services. Mr. Burrows?
Yes, sir. Boring or horizontal directional drilling is a trenchless method of installing fusible water lines and sewer lines. We have a lot of these areas that are heavily congested and trying to replace existing galvanized water mains to make it more efficient and potentially more cost-effective in some of these areas instead of replacing a whole lot of landscaping and driveways. We went out for bid for what we're calling on-call boring services. Essentially, the contractor will be providing labor and equipment to install. We will be providing materials separate from this out of our own warehouse so that they did not have to worry about locking in material prices as they're fluctuating. So we received 3 bids for this in mid-July, and the apparent low bidder is D&C Directional Boring. We have worked with them on previous projects in the past, so we are familiar with them. This will, currently, the term of the pricing will remain in effect for 6 months. Once the contract is commenced, and then we can negotiate that contract at that time. Hopefully it stays the same or becomes better for us, but at the very least we'll have them locked in for 6 months. If this is awarded, we've got a list of projects for them to work on, and the first one they're going to start working on is actually replacing the galvanized in the St. Clair subdivision on St. Simons. So this is something, instead of them going out constantly and having to get quotes for every little bitty job, we'll have this contract locked in. And then the other thing would be the potential Wesley Oaks Circle project. That's an approved funding project for this year. It's all 8-inch or smaller water lines that need to be replaced, so we might use this contract to do that as well. So it just speeds up the process on a couple of projects here for us.
Can I have a motion?
Well, I'll offer the motion. I'll move the Facilities Committee recommend to the full commission award contract to D&C Directional Boring LLC as listed in the attached bid tabulation.
I'll second the motion.
Any questions?
I have,
Oh,
excuse
sorry.
me, Chuck, a few questions here. Given that I like the approach, and I think this is a good tool to use. Just from my understanding, do we have a handle on probably what the average annual footage for these sizes might be that we would use this service?
The galvanized project was set up to do somewhere between 2 to 3 miles a year.
Okay,
So that gives you kind of a scope, depends on what size lines we're replacing in there.
okay. And based on the pricing here, mobilization is loaded in there on a per foot price?
Yes, rather than having to get mobilization charges on each one, it's loaded in the per foot.
Okay, so you found that to be a better buy, perhaps?
It is, it's helping us out here, and one thing to note, D&C Directional, I believe, is out of Townsend, so their mobilization costs to here are much lower than some of these other firms are.
Sure, okay. And given that they're providing just labor and equipment, tools, no materials, why are we choosing just a 6-month contract?
They wanted, that was at their request because the labor market changes rapidly these days. So hopefully we'll be able to renegotiate or extend the contract for another 6 months or a year at that time. But also I think they wanted to make sure how much work they were going to be doing under this contract for that 6-month period. Kind of a ease into it approach until we firmed it up.
That was in the request for proposals?
It was.
We put that in there?
It was,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Okay, well, I would just pursue a year contract
Sure.
afterwards.
That would be the hope
that
as well,
Once
yes.
you get through the test drive. That's all I have.
Any
I
other
think
questions?
you asked the same questions I was going to, so I'm good.
All in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Next item is Academy Creek Water Pollution Control Facility Rehab, change order number 2. Mr. Burrows?
Yes, sir. Our ongoing Academy Creek project, we have asked for a couple of additional items to be priced for us. So back in May, we approved a change order for a number of small items that came to a total of $64,464 with an updated substantial completion date at that time of July 31st. In the 2 months between the May meeting and July 31st, we found a few more items that needed to be addressed. Those included modifying the influent guide rails that the pumps sit lower down on for the odor control covers, and then a sump pump control panel and audible alarm at the filter structure. If the pumps have a failure down in the pit, there's no current alarm structure, so we'll have a panel sitting up beside the filter structure that if the float tips, it's gonna send an audible alarm out. So we get down there in time to make sure we don't lose pumps or anything like that. And then 2 other items. One, the main item here is actually a price to completely repave the inside of the fence area at Academy Creek. The paving portion of this change order is $398,204. The other item in here, as we know, we have projects to install UV disinfection equipment and increase the RAS flow rates at the facility, the recycled sludge rates. So that will require electrical improvements. So rather than going after we pave and starting to put conduits under the ground and potentially have to cut the fresh pavement, we asked them to give us pricing to go ahead and install those conduits so we can pull the feeders at a later date. So that was included. So all told, the requested change order is $427,131. Again, almost $400,000 of the $427,000 is for paving. They have also asked for a time extension of 92 days to complete the repaving and the remaining punch list and vendor-related items. Vendor-related items still holding up project completion. We're waiting on a power supply panel for the hydraulics at the sludge offloading facility, which is at no cost to us. That was just left out of the original supplier spec. Refabricating a portion of the odor control covers that were incorrectly measured to the joint water by the vendor, so that's no cost to us. And then we've got some electrical components that need replacing on the electronic components that need replacing on the bar screens with the HMIs and controllers. They're functioning, they're just not functioning with all the bells and whistles right now, and that is also at no cost to JWSC. They're still working through a handful of punch list items as well, but the bulk of the 92 days needed here are for the vendor-related items and, of course, completing the paving. And then you can see, as we go back through there, Ruby Collins submitted their breakdown for every item included in the change orders.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move the Facilities Committee recommend to the full commission approve change order number 1 for Academy Creek WPCF rehab project in the amount of $427,131 and approve a time extension of 92 days for Ruby Collins, Inc. to complete the project.
I'll second the motion.
Questions about the paving as it's referred to. Andrew, when I look at their details, they're showing a milling of the asphalt.
That's correct.
And reuse, but they don't show much. Okay, I see now is road base, which is coming under the conduit project. But it doesn't show any under the paving project, so.
Right, so essentially what they're planning to do is mill 2 inches down on the existing pavement and just put 2 inches of asphalt back once it's milled.
Now, that's the entire asphalted area inside the fence?
Inside the fence, including the areas, the parking areas by the solids building,
Right.
the admin buildings and everything like that.
So everything asphalt basically getting redone.
That's correct.
But they don't address dealing with any of the base. And, you know, my experience is that in a project like this, you're always going to have some base that has to be dealt with, simply because the asphalt's been broken up.
Right.
In a few places, there's going to be some there. So they don't address that in here. The only place they address putting any base material in place is where they actually do the trenching for placement of the conduits.
Yes, sir.
So my concern is that they'll be wanting to come back and say, hey, we need a change order because we got to fix the base on X square yards of some area. Has there been any discussion about that?
There has
prior to-
not, no, sir, there's not been any discussion of that thus far.
Do you know who the sub is?
I don't remember their name. It's some paving contractor out of Jacksonville, not one that we've used before.
Now, on the recommended action there, is that, how it's worded, that says Ruby Collins in amount of $10,630,000. So that includes, so
That's the-
extending it to that amount.
Extending the total amount to
Okay.
that. So that'll be the total project amount on the recommended action.
Yeah.
Overall, I endorse the activity being requested. It just, I think we're gonna see some more stuff come up, because they know what's out there. I've stumbled in some of the holes out there myself, so I think that's gonna come back.
Probably a very valid point, and hopefully we'll be able to handle that in the field without having to bring anything back to you.
That's the answer I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm good.
I have a question. Where is the funding coming from for this extra money?
It'll be GFA funded.
It will be.
If we have approved change orders, GFA, as long as we go through the correct processes, GFA understands on these projects, there's gonna be things that come up.
Right, because I think repaving is probably very important. I mean, we won't have an opportunity to do this again anytime soon. And it's good to have, being a good neighbor also, to keep the dust down.
Keep the dust down, make the plant look and feel a little better, and hopefully I'll stop getting flat tires from driving around there.
Well, that would be nice too.
I'm on 3 so far, this project.
Does this talk about how long it's gonna take to do the paving and when they're gonna start?
They have 92 days total from today, or from tomorrow if approved. It's through October 31st is when they would be required to be finished with the paving and all of the punch list and vendor-related items.
Yeah, that's very doable.
Okay. Any other questions?
None for me.
Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Next item is pump station 4110 pumps purchase, Mr. Burris.
Yes, sir. Would you pull up on GS? So 4110 is located on Harry Driggers Boulevard, near the entrance to the kayak launch and skate park at the Brunswick-Glynn Recreational Complex. This receives flow from the Harry Driggers area, and currently all areas along Highway 99 pump to this station. It has seen tremendous ragging issues over the past several months. We appear to be getting some rags in along Highway 99, but a large portion of the rags appear to be coming in the actual gravity basin feeding pump station 4110. So we've not been able to pinpoint the exact cause, so we are looking at some of the more heavy users in the area to see if they may be the concern. However, those rags get in there and they bind up around the impeller, and one of them actually had the shaft snap because it bound up so much. The cost to replace that was more expensive than the pump was worth at this point. The other pump was pulled for inspection, and it appears to have reached the end of its useful life as well. Currently, this station is on bypass out there on Harry Driggers and hasn't been on bypass for a couple of months. We went out for quotes on these, and we actually talked to 5 manufacturers. My apologies for the typo there. 5 manufacturers, 4 of them that all have asterisks there: Brunswick, Sulzer, KSB, and Flight. All came in with pump requirements for the flow and head requirements necessary above 100 horsepower, which is all the VFDs are rated for out there. So the numbers you see listed as the cost there includes the cost to install 2 new VFDs in the process. The one that came in at 100 horsepower is actually a Gorman-Rupp suction lift pump. Our typical pumps are submersible centrifugal pumps that go down into the wet well, and the flow actually goes through it that way. These actually lift the water out of the wet well and pumps it. The pumps will actually be above ground. And the reason that's attractive, not only is the VFDs not have to be replaced, and not only is it the shortest lead time, but this allows us to install all the piping and valves above ground. The existing valve pit at this station is set up for 2 6-inch discharge, and we're actually increasing the on-site to 12-inch discharge and valves. And there is no way to put 12-inch valves in that existing valve pit, so we would have to expand the valve pit. Based off of recent bid prices, a new valve pit of that size would probably be $40,000 to $50,000. So the valves are not included in the prices here because they would be required regardless of which one of these we went with. So kind of combination of constructability, cost of the construction, and then not having to upgrade the electrical. At the site, staff recommends moving forward with the purchase of 2 Gorman-Rupp suction lift pumps from Templeton and Associates for $129,500. This will be funded by the Systems Pumping and Maintenance Annual Operating Budget.
Can I have a motion?
I'll move that the Facilities Committee recommend the full commission approve the purchase of 2 new pumps for Pump Station 4110 from Templeton and Associates in the amount of $129,500.
Second.
Motion second, any questions?
I have a question. What's the source of the ragging? Can you pinpoint that at all, or?
We have some speculation, but we don't have any official answers yet.
Okay.
There are a couple of schools in the area
Mhm.
that could be contributing. Kids flush all kind of things down the line. And
And, in the computer world, we call that user error.
Right. so we also are getting ragging off of Highway 99. We've had some pumps clog up along the way there.
Okay,
But these are bigger pumps that are clogging up at 4110, and they're not clogging up at the stations along Highway 99 as often, so it's got to be getting in the actual gravity basin there somewhere. So, could be homeowners, could be a manhole lid that's got knocked off somewhere we haven't found yet. There's put a lot of potential causes, but hopefully with these suction lift pumps, in the interim, we'll set the levels so that the rags will settle out. We can go by with a vac truck, suck the rags out later until we can pinpoint the source there.
yeah.
Commissioner Turnipseed knows this. I am typically not a fan of recommending suction lift pumps, but it's the right application for the job we have out there right now.
Interesting. This also might be an opportunity for us to get out to the school and do some education with the kids there.
Yes.
About the concerns about flushing things down the toilet, because kids usually listen, particularly, and might be useful.
So, there's in no way are we sure that it's coming from the school, but they are the largest water users that drain to that station.
Okay.
This pump station actually pumps everything from North Mainland to
That is
Academy
correct.
Creek plant.
Everything from Highway 99 pumps up to a pump station 4118 at the end of Shell Road across from the Morningstar Boys Estate and pumps back down to this station on Harry Driggers. And this station drains everything on Harry Driggers as well.
And prior to the project just being completed, it was pumped around the Highway 17 all the way down through there.
Pumps across the airport
So it
property,
can actually go in
Fletsy.
both
Right.
directions.
It could, long-term, if we needed it to, flow in both directions.
Mhm.
My question, I want to make sure that these pumps are designed so they would still operate in both directions. Because self-priming pumps have a net positive suction head we got to look at. And the conditions are going to be different going in one direction than the other, so we need to make sure we're not cutting ourselves short with this.
We can certainly confirm with the manufacturer. Find the curve here.
And what's the delivery on these pumps?
8 to 12 weeks, which is considerably shorter than some of the other
I see
delivery
that,
times.
yeah.
And we don't have to change out any control panels or anything?
No, sir. Just land them and we're good to go. Everything's already sized for everything up to 100 horsepower.
And what kind of, do we have transducers in the wet well?
They have radar. So instead of having a submerged transducer, we have radar levels that shoot from the top so that we don't have to worry about them getting trash and stuff on them. So we have standardized with radar controls for our larger stations. No more cigar style. They get grease all over them and have to be pulled out and wiped.
Any other questions? All in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Next item, now we move to the discussion, water production report, Mr. Burrows.
All right, our water production report this month on the Brunswick mainland system. The one thing that'll obviously jump out at you is that the Goodyear Park well barely ran this month, and that is because it has been down due to electrical and electronic issues. In fact, recently I bumped in at lunch today to our SCADA tech, who is out there actively working on getting the new control set up. It was only able to be ran in hand and could not function. Didn't feel comfortable leaving it running overnight, so we would turn it on periodically just to make sure everything was in service until we could get it corrected. But hopefully that will be running today or tomorrow back like normal. So because of that, you see, looks like the I-95 well took up some of the brunt of that, adding about 2 million gallons a day of flow to that facility, and the Howard Coffin picked up about 1 million gallons a day to compensate. One of the advantages we have with our distribution system and the number of wells we have is having one well down for maintenance doesn't impact us that
Yeah,
much.
you get the,
So we can balance those things. But overall, flow was a little bit lower for the month of July compared to June, which when we get to the wastewater report is likely because people were not watering their grass because of the amount of rain we received in the month of July. So
rained every day.
on our flow charts there, you see it's pretty consistent. Obviously, outdoor water usage can change a little bit throughout the months depending on flow, rainfall and things of that nature. On St. Simon's, it did have an issue briefly at the Mallory well that caused it to be down for a couple of days. So you can see the airport picked up the slack there. Those two wells being on the south end, if one of them's down, the other one just picks up the slack. But a very consistent flow for the last 3 months. As we know, the island is busy starting in the summertime, and water usage has remained strong over the month, the summer period thus far.
What was the issue at the Mallory well?
It was electrical as well. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was electrical as well. No, it was SCADA. I take that back. The SCADA panel messed up, and we had to get something overnighted from our previous SCADA provider to make sure it still functioned.
The complaints that we have, those were addressed,
These have all been addressed, yes, sir.
and what were they?
One of them was a dirty water issue after we had recently flushed in the area. Somebody starts using the water and they hadn't flushed in the area. If we haven't flushed recently in the area, get some particles out. Usually if you just let it run, drain out your service line, it'll clean up. And I do not remember what the other one was at this point. This month actually was the month we did all of our lead and copper samples and sent them off. So we spent a lot of time working with the customers. They have to get those own samples. So we were actually out there working with about 30 of our customers to get those lead and copper samples as well. And then South Mainland, pretty consistent flow there, a little bit lower down at Brookman for the month. But overall flow rate is, very consistent compared, about average for where we've been for the last 18 months down at the South Mainland. So overall water system is functioning effectively and being very consistent. Our staff is keeping things moving successfully. We've got a few new staff members and operators in that division, so exciting to have some different set of eyes occasionally taking a look at these things. So,
Can I ask how we're doing with the leak reports with the new meters?
How many up to now?
We're still getting a lot of those continuous usage reports,
Mhm.
but what we've done is we've established a service order type with our customer service representatives that they now can forward to our AMI IT technicians for their review to go out and take a look and see if the line is something that's associated with the installation of the meter or if it was something that was pre-existing. So we're tracking those just to make sure that we don't have installation concerns and something that we need to address with the contractor.
Okay.
We've sent out over 1,000
Yes, sir.
letters thus far. We've got 15,000 meters replaced.
And
Wow.
just to clarify, that's 1,000 addresses.
Right.
Some of those have received more than one notice for their continuous consumption.
What's been the response?
It's been extremely favorable. Customers appreciate being able to see that visual graph of their usage. Some of the customer service representatives have provided some feedback to us, letting us know, customer comes in, maybe sometimes it's, what's this? Can you help me read through this? Or, hey, I received this, I didn't realize that I had this usage that was occurring overnight until I received your chart. So it's good education for the customer one way or the other.
Okay, and of those that have significant continuous use, are they implementing a means to reduce the waste?
It depends, that we are leaving that to the discretion of the customer, whether or not that's the action that they take. We did decide that we wouldn't continue to send notices more than after the second notice that we'd sent. Some of those are customers who just say, yes, I know I have a particular water feature in my yard that I know uses that much water, or I have a particular process within my property that I know uses that, or even with the commercial customers, obviously a truck wash or a hotel, it's not unusual to see that usage overnight.
Okay,
Some
Thank you.
people, they'd rather pay a slightly higher water bill than have to get a plumber involved with fixing a leak. So it's It's really up to the customer at that point.
Yeah, and where I'm going with this is that for those that we've made notifications of this water loss, for example, if they haven't benefited from it, is that they shouldn't come back to us as a loss forgiveness
Right.
under the other policy that we have.
Certainly something, if you've been made aware and you continue to ignore it, then
Right.
Exactly.
it's something. that we
You have been warned.
I will say you do have some people, you know, there are a handful of people that you send them the letter and they just refuse to believe they have a leak and tell you that your data's crazy. Even if you go out there and see the meter spinning, they refuse to
Well,
believe they have a leak.
As long as they're willing to pay the bill,
Yes,
That's
you know,
fine.
and you know, a lot of people, we have a hard time actually conceptualizing how much water something is. And somebody says they lost 10,000 gallons in a month, and there's no way I'd have missed 10,000 gallons of water going out in the yard.
yeah.
Well, over 30 days, that's really not that much water, particularly in our sandy soils that just wick water away. So,
I will tell you one thing, when we see some of the plumbing bills involved with them, I can understand some people having hesitancy about, rushing to get them fixed. So, because I know sometimes those bills are very high.
Okay, next item is Water Pollution Control Facility Plant Flows Report. Mr. Burrs.
yes, sir. So, as I was mentioning, it was a wet month, starting at Academy Creek. The National Weather Service gauges said 9 inches, just shy of 9 inches of rain for the month. That's in one location where it's taking those readings. I think in some other locations we got some higher readings for the month. But it is definitely reflected in both the influent flow rate and the concentrations that are coming in. 7.4 million gallons, up about 1 million gallons a day on average from where we've been at, 1.5 million in some locations, some senses from that. But the influent concentrations down below 150 tells you a lot of that was diluted with rainwater, particularly given some of the industrial flows we have coming in that facility. So all the influent concentrations being lower, obviously everything going out is well within permit. BOD at 5 and TSS at 3 with the filters, and that was including some ongoing testing with the filters with the vendor here. Ammonia bounced back up a little bit to 2.6, but we were doing some work on the RAS lines from the clarifiers with the contractor. So we've typically been running 5 clarifiers because we're waiting on a gearbox for clarifier number 6. Well, for a couple of weeks, we were down to 4 clarifiers because we had to redo some of the RAS lines leading there. So kind of expected it to go back up a little bit, but it was good to see that it didn't jump back up while having an additional clarifier down for a couple of weeks there. Plant 96.5% BOD removal and 98% TSS removal. Still working through the nuances of the new filters, but they are being very effective for us at this time. And also, I would just like to point out on the last column on sludge tons to the landfill, I think what you're seeing there is better treatment ongoing in the process, and the biological process is doing its job more effectively, so you're getting less solids into your actual digester, so you don't have to press as much. So I think that's an indication, and it's also consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Consistency is a great thing in a wastewater plant, so
So,
Yeah, that's significant, 50 tons less
50 tons less, that's correct.
monthly
And,
basis.
and with that being said, you look at the graph and it's following some trends here. You see the gold and gray bars are the rainfall, and July tends to be a wet one around here. So flow has followed the rainfall to a certain extent, but all in all, plant there being operated quite effectively as we are moving through the process. And on Dunbar, again, a lot of rainfall. National Weather Service gauge at the airport said 10 inches of rain on St. Simons for the month. The actual rainfall gauge at Dunbar Creek, which is a manual gauge we have to dump out, so it's not 100% accurate all the time, we actually recorded 17 inches at the plant site for the month. So that's probably a little high, but it was a very wet month on St. Simons. And as you see, it was obviously reflected in the flows and the concentrations coming in. Quite a lot lower, and you can see from the past couple of months where it had been exceedingly dry for several months there, the concentrations got up over 200 parts for both of them, and we're back in the 160s, 170s here. So flow rate is elevated. Got systems pumping and maintenance is running reports on potential new leak scenarios that have showed up on us as far as I&I situations, so we can pinpoint that, that new source of I&I that we're seeing there. Do see that the ammonia went back to normal for the month after last month's excursion, and everything being operated well there, 98% BOD and 99% TSS removal at that facility there at Dunbar Creek, which I don't know if we have any photos of this in the project report.
I think we do.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute. So as you can see, the rainfall again for July jumps off the page at you. But I will note, the rainfall in the gray there is the rainfall for this year, and the gold is rainfall from last year. We have made improvements because we got 4 additional inches of rain and the flow didn't change for the month of July. So that is improvements. We
Yeah.
just got to find some more holes we got to fill in. And then down at Southport, still having concerns on that influent meter. We're actually just going to buy a new influent meter and replace it. There's something that is obviously not right there. We've had it calibrated repeatedly. We keep getting these numbers that don't make any sense. But that facility operates mostly with a tight system down there. It's a newer system, mostly PVC, so we don't have as many I&I issues. But the plant operated very effectively there. The influent concentrations, again, are about the same because we don't have as much I&I, but always remember there, a huge portion of the flow we get there is from truck washing and the port facility that is going to be lower strength waste coming into the facility. But about 97% of BOD and TSS removal, and only 8 inches of rain in the south part of the county, so apparently it was the dry one for the month.
On Dunbar Creek, the permit is for 4. Tell me what the 4 is. Is that average? Is that monthly average daily flow?
Monthly average daily flow of 4, and we have a weekly limit of 5. So the weekly daily average, max weekly is 5.
And so we were at 3.7. That's a monthly flow of
That's the monthly
3.7?
average daily flow, that's correct.
We don't know what the weekly was.
I had those numbers, but the highest weekly was, if I remember correctly, it was around 4.5.
Okay.
But, you know,
So we're
you've got 30
saying, you're
days.
saying we're getting close to that permit.
We are getting close,
That's right.
because of the I&I. We need to, try to dry it up a little more in some areas. But just remember, if you've got 1 week that it gets out of hand in a 4-week period, you can end up with some higher flows for the month when the rest of the month was down closer to 3 or 3.1.
Do our pumping systems and maintenance people, do they monitor the pump run times? So that would help us tell us what areas are worse than others?
That is correct, yes, sir. So it has not been a standard practice for them to run those reports after rain events, but we've got that implemented now. Sometimes you get some inconsistencies in the data, which confuses folks, but the other thing we're looking at is what's the total volume that's getting into these pump stations, because we may have a small pump station that's saying it's going up 3 times the run rate, but it's
Yeah,
10,000 gallons of water.
yeah.
That's not really gonna help us out that much versus a larger station that's only going up 20%, but you're getting an extra 200,000 gallons of water through it. So we're trying to prioritize those that are actually giving us the big clumps of water instead of the percentage increases.
All right. Capital project report photos, Mr. Klein.
All right, Commissioners. Walk quickly through our project report. Okay, first of all, we are wrapping up Project 702, which is the North Mainland Force Main Reroute. But we are going through last punch list items, minor items for the contractor to address. Part of those are up and down Harry-Driggers Boulevard with some sidewalk replacement. A couple panels of sidewalk that were damaged during their construction activities. Glynn County requested they replace. And also, good shot up top picture. So daily as we're working on these projects, we're in direct contact many times with our customers. In this case, this is Ms. Linda White. She is the HOA president at Southern Land. She was very involved with the project, or very interested. And in this case, the contractor worked closely with her to repair some damaged sprinkler heads that were out there. You build up these relationships with folks. In a lot of cases, there's a spokesperson for the community or the neighborhood that you're working in front of, and they're a very good advocate for you when work with them. Bottom left picture is a good example. I'll give you a little backstory on this. Part of what we do when we put lines in the ground is we pull tracer wire with those lines. The reason why we do that is so that we can find those lines again in the future without having to dig up. As part of the inspection process or final closeout process, we actually test that tracer wire to make sure it's continuous or has a continuous, or we can pick a continuous signal through it. In this case, there was a gap that the tracer wire had in it. So therefore, the contractor went back down, remedied that by digging back down on the pipe, finding the wire, reconnecting, and then fixing that. What they did in this case, at their own suggestion, put in access boxes for the tracer wire. So now we can go in and we can clamp onto those wires, and we can trace that force main very easily now if we ever have to go out and locate that, which we surely will have to do in the future at some point. Bottom right is some of the sidewalk being replaced. Academy Creek plant, Mr. Burris covered a couple high points of that, but I'll let him cover the pictures.
Sure, your top left there is the actual bar screens. So you can see the low level of material that's still being pulled out there. Those screens are really being quite effective. Again, some of the talked about during the change order, some of the electronics are not working, but the screens themselves are doing a great job. Staff's very excited about the function that we have there. Still have a lot of rags that are in the system that they're still having to work through, but hopefully not getting much, if any, rags through the new screens as they're going through. On the right, that's the pumps for the filter backwash. So we talked about that sump pump panel that needed to be added. Essentially, what this is in case one of those pipes burst or one of those pumps fails and there's water going everywhere, there'll be a sump pump down there that's tied to an alarm, and that's that audible alarm so that pit doesn't fill up with water. And they'll be bigger than this, but those are actually Gorman-Rupp pumps that are similar to what we will be installing out at Pump Station 4110. All right. Those are the odor control covers on the left there, and you see not everything is covered. Those are the ones that we're actually having to get remanufactured. They can't necessarily see it in this photo, but there's some beams that they did not measure correctly, and so where they had put their beams at, we're going to be in conflict with actually pulling the pumps out without having to completely disassemble the jigsaw puzzle, which we were not pleased with. So they're having to reconfigure the way they're doing that. You can see the intake for the odor control, that white pipe on the very back is actually the intake for the odor control system. The odor control system is functioning. It does. I have not noticed odors off-site since when I've been driving through there, but it will be even more effective once all of that material is actually enclosed. On the right is the shot of the filter structure from far away and some of the regrading, and contractor has hydroseeded that now, trying to get grass to grow, but I think it's just a common thing. Contractors just hate trying to grow grass. So they say it's the worst part of a job is trying to grow grass. So
It's tough watching it, too.
it is.
Question on the odor control. At what point do we expect to have that completed to where we know that we've done all that we can to capture odors?
They cut Ruby Collins, actually, and I applaud them for this because I told them we were not paying for it. They actually half the cost with the supplier to remanufacture the odor control panel, so they cut the PO for that about 2 weeks ago. And they told us that it would take 6 to 8 weeks to remanufacture the panels. And then, so that puts you sort of into September. So you're probably looking mid-October before everything's installed.
Okay.
Hopefully that can be sped up since this is an ongoing project. But I would not get too excited about any speed ups on that right now.
Well, it'd just be a good milestone to be able to
Yes.
share with others. that,
Absolutely.
you know.
I was speaking with one of the city commissioners and Miss Regina from the city the other day, and I said, when we get everything finished, I want to do for lack of a better term, a grand reopening ceremony down there, and I want to set a tent right by the influent well, which right before the project you would never do because it would not be enjoyable to stand there. But when these get done, you could just have a tent right there and have people stand there, and you won't be able to smell anything. So
That's a good
good
idea.
sight.
Yeah.
And then at the bottom, I have reason to believe this is probably a Todd Klein special.
Javo gets credit for this, but we both enjoy the wildlife, yeah.
That is-
You know, this is a great photo to send over to the news.
Right.
Yeah.
They're probably always looking for something similar to this, and this is a dichotomy that some would not appreciate, the benefit of what we're doing there environmentally such that we have beautiful
Absolutely.
wildlife that's flourishing right downstream from our
Yeah.
industrial facility.
And we do get a gator that likes to come back in there sometimes. And I have not seen him, but I hear reports of the occasional manatee making his way back in there at high tide, obviously,
Oh,
for
yeah.
the manatee.
It's actually a really beautiful area back there. Really
It is. We have a great photo that Jason got with the drone where you're coming back above the plant and you can see the whole flow pattern all the way out, and there's the bridge in the background.
Yeah.
A really nice photo.
That photo might be nice on the website, too.
Could be.
You know?
Could be.
Yes.
All right. Arco area water and sewer extension is proceeding. We're getting the rest of the balance of the water main installed out there with our contractor. And worthy of note is it's never too late to make some improvements in a project, generally never too late. And we're doing that with this. We had a property owner out there approach us to offer us an easement. They are a majority property owner on one of the blocks and have offered to give us an easement that runs back through their property. It's going to allow us to move a section of the gravity main out of the roadway. And we'll have some cost savings due to that. So we've already got the survey in hand. Mr. Dormany's team is creating the legal description for that. And likely for the next commission meeting, we'll be bringing that before the commission for review.
It's a nice mailbox there.
That's,
Are they laying sewer lines too now?
no, sir, no sewer yet.
Still don't have manholes, right?
Waiting on structures.
Really?
Waiting on structures. And if you have a chance, drive down through that area, Og Avenue and such. They're really doing some improvements to that neighborhood. So dressing up a lot of those homes, and it's looking really good. And our project's gonna do nothing but help beautify that area. Galvanized replacements, it's an ongoing operational project every year. Good shot of the team there, holding up some of the treasures they've dug up. Flanges, typical galvanized pipe, what's the remnants of what's left of them. Mr. Alvin Hall and his crew members, and they're very proud to bring us samples routinely of what they find out in the field. They get really excited about their work. Meter replacements, it's touched on before, but Ms. Roberts, you have
We
anything
did
else you want
cross
to add?
the magical halfway point, so we've got over 15,000 meters installed now.
Yeah.
So
They've been doing a lot of work up and down Martin Luther King Boulevard too, and man, you see these guys out there getting it. In some of the areas they're working, this is a good shot here, right up against people's homes, you know, right next to, in this case, a sewer clean out. I mean, it's, every one is a unique install, so.
Are we finding meters we didn't know we had, or are we finding some services that did not have meters on them?
Services
Yes,
that
we
have
are.
meters, yeah.
And we're also finding some inconsistencies with the number of dials that are being recorded versus the number that are being charged. So there is some revenue recovery that's happening within our system.
Say that last
Number
thing.
of dials, yes, sir. The billing is based on the reading of the meter.
Right.
But the reading is based on the number of dials, because that determines whether it's a multiplier of 10, 100, 1,000, whatever
Right.
it may be. So
Yeah.
if we have the incorrect number of dials in the system versus what's actually out in the field, then we're either under or over billing. The ones we found, we've been under billing. So we've recognized some revenue recovery just from that. So I'd say there's probably.
How much is that recovery?
Beg your pardon?
How much is that recovery? Is that an input area in our computer system?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So it's
We
usually-
won't have that with our new system, because our new system just tied in, don't have that, right?
No, it has dials. We got the analog heads on them instead of the digital heads, because people are used to seeing them, and people have more
Right.
confidence when they go out there, they're used to seeing them, so it'll still have dials, so we still have to do that process.
What we won't have is the compound meters, maybe that's what you were thinking, is before we would have the one low flow reading and the one high flow reading, that we were having to add the two together to get the monthly billing. Now it's just one meter, one reading.
Okay. And we found some people that didn't even have a meter.
Yes, sir,
Right.
that's correct.
And/or some creative bypass setups.
What's for your talented plumbers,
Yes.
In our city.
Really?
They're able to, well, you know, go around the meter a little bit there and they find it and you have to file a police report. It's a whole thing.
Offer the job.
Yes.
How many of those have we had?
Just a handful.
Yeah, those have not been significant, no, sir.
Okay.
And we appreciate the inventorying and mapping, so all of the meters will be in GIS mapping, updated with good coordinates as well.
Really good.
Dunbar Creek.
Dunbar Creek, we have 2 items of note here, one of which I don't have any photos in here because it just got opened up today, but I'll be happy to show you some photos of after the meeting on my phone. But the main photos we have here of the actual tank painting. We've been rehabbing a steel tank there. In some of the areas when we went to pressure wash and blast off the paint, we actually knocked holes in the tank, so they had to go back and weld plates over that and fill in some of the pitted areas. We had our tank inspector, Mr. Ed Chapman, came out and took a look at that to make sure everything was good to go. And now the tank is fully painted. The piping around it has been painted. They have not installed, they've not lettered the pipe yet. They'll do that at a later date when they come back. But the grating has been reinstalled. They've actually painted appropriately some high vis on the steps there going up. So that tank is currently being filled up with effluent water for a static test to make sure that all of the welds are holding as appropriately. The other thing, and if you would go to GIS to Dunbar, the other thing is we had a pipe collapse on the plant site that they are down on today, and I, during this meeting, have gotten a photo of the hole, and now I know where all the dirt went. So, right, zoom in right there, Todd. That there, those, you see that blue structure is that building right there. There's 2 concrete pad, 1 concrete pad just to the north of that, just right there, yes, and then right there. So you see the concrete circle where the manhole comes in? Go north to the left. Right there, there you go. So the flow is coming into that as gravity into that structure, and then there are 2 actual structures there on the right side of the roadway. The one directly across going into the circular structure, that 36-inch line collapsed.
Oh, my.
Wow.
Now, luckily we could valve it off, and it all goes to the other station. So we're still gonna have to bypass. We got it bypassed now, so we could actually dig down on it. Obviously, you don't want to reconnect to that manhole when it's active, but they are digging down. This was a great cooperative effort. Our on-site contractor, BRW Construction, was actually there. Me and the contractor were actually walking around looking at stuff when we found the sinkhole. So he immediately jumped into action. But ductile iron pipe is extremely hard to get right now, and particularly 36-inch and larger ductile iron pipe is extremely hard to get right now. So we actually tapped into some contacts we had with our plant contractor at Academy Creek, and they had enough ductile iron, coated ductile iron on their lot in Atlanta that we were able to purchase from them to expedite getting this corrected. So our contractor, BRW, went to their yard, Ruby Collins yard in Smyrna, and brought the pipe back. So great network of contacts there. Another reason to make sure we keep our contractors happy so they can help us out in these scenarios.
How'd they manage the hole? Or have they dug the hole?
They've
yet?
dug, it's trenched. They got trench boxes in there now.
Okay.
They've been dewatering since Monday. I was out there yesterday. Mr. Klein was there. They had not down to the pipe yet. They were in the process of installing the trench boxing at that point, but it was being dewatered. Even when we had the valve shut, there was still quite a lot of groundwater coming in there through that line. We have, when we get this pipe replaced, we'll have eliminated at least one source of I&I internal to the plant going through. But yes, we now have a white wastewater tank.
Yeah.
The inside is beige.
Thing looks new.
It does look new.
Inside
Good job.
looks very good. They did a very good job. Did have some overspray issues that got on some of the nearby neighboring vehicles, but contractor got their crew, the detailing crews in there, got it all taken care of.
Okay, that concludes the pictures for the picture report.
Question about Dunbar. You know, comment came up in the earlier session, in the approval session, about laydown area limitations that we have. We have some land out there. Would that be useful that we clear an acre or half acre for laydown? It could be, and I'm thinking of the projects that we have just on the island themselves, and those are coming up in the next 5 years. That would be a good place.
Currently, that northwest quadrant,
Yeah.
you're looking at the Glynn County property. I've talked to Dave Austin 100 times.
That'd be a great laydown area.
Refuses to negotiate with me.
Yeah.
He understands the value he's got there. But that northwest grassy area now is currently where we're storing materials in advance of replacing the Arnold Road force main in November.
Right.
So we've got pipe and a lot of GAB sitting out there, staged, because there's no place really in between there that we can stage that amount of material.
Yeah, just the area immediately north of,
Yeah,
the
right there.
tank that we've, refurbished. Maybe that's a really convenient place, and then the other part that's, over there between Tommy Pickering's home and the Glynn County's, site that's wooded now.
Mm.
Probably would wanna maintain a buffer to the street.
Sure.
But at least that's, perhaps it's pretty accessible, but it's just, could be a good use for laydown.
Absolutely.
How do we put those colors on that, Todd, to make on those structures? How do you-
GIS draws them in by hand.
Oh, the colors?
Yeah, how do they select those colors? Because it's not a water plant, it's green.
That is a good question. That's a legacy decision. I'm not sure. Not sure how the colors, and sometimes they come up differently depending on which computer you're on. It's all user
Our two
selected.
GIS individuals, Michael Terrell and Dana Reed, they select the colors, and we get used to what colors they select.
While we got that up, can you explain, Andrew, what we're gonna be doing right there on this expansion
Sure.
to us?
Mind if I go to the podium so I can
Absolutely.
have control of the mouse?
The conch is yours, sir.
And also talk about the access into the site,
Right.
how it is now and how it's gonna be.
I'm gonna turn off all the colors here. Okay, so this is the tank right here that just finished being rehabbed. Both of these tanks, this one's steel, this one's concrete. So the concrete tank doesn't have to be repainted. But you see the bubbles here, those come in and diffused air comes in the bottom of the tank and blows bubbles through. All of those diffusers in both of those tanks will be replaced. So we, luckily, when we broke down this tank, we got all the grit out of it. So the suspicion is, once we get this tank back in service and new diffusers in it and we pump this one down, we're probably gonna have a whole lot of grit we gotta handle out of that tank as well. But that will have new higher efficiency diffusers in those scenarios. We'll be putting odor control up here. This is the gravity headworks facility here, bar screens and grit removal. So these will be covered similar to the covers you saw pictured at Academy Creek, and there will be a odor control tower sitting right about here that will help pull those gases, and we are oversizing that intentionally, because this long gravity line here comes out on Sea Island Road, and there's a manhole right there on the back entrance to the plant, which will become the front entrance to the plant. But occasionally, and sometimes frequently, we have odors at this manhole right here. So we are intentionally oversizing the odor control for this area to draft the odors all the way from this manhole into the facility. They looked at the cost of installing a separate odor control back off the right-of-way here, and it's just because of all the electrical, it's easier just to oversize the one than it is to install two. So that will be completed. We are looking at these clarifiers here, secondary clarifiers. The water flows from here into the clarifiers. You can see, looks like chocolate milk here, looks like water here. These clarifiers, we're looking at potentially, we did not move forward with this, but potentially locating another clarifier here. And we're still looking at not necessarily doing that now, but making sure it's drawn in, because we're going to change the entrance road. Currently, the main entrance is off of Palmetto. The main entrance will be off of Sea Island Road, so to know where to put the roadway improvements so that we're not encroaching on potential future expansion opportunities for the clarifiers. So this will be paved and smoothed out. It's never going to be a 4-lane highway out there, but it will allow us to get in and out without having to go through the Glen Haven neighborhood. Currently, in this right here by these clarifiers, let me turn off the sewer layer so you can see what I'm talking about. This is a UV system. And these are tertiary filters. If we are ever going to put a third clarifier, this makes the most sense to put the third clarifier. So what we're going to do is actually not use the same equipment. We're going to buy new UV and filters, which have been ordered, and they will be installed in this current post-aeration basin. So currently, this is an old chlorine contact chamber. So that we will modify this structure to allow for the UV system and filters to be installed here, and we'll have to modify the effluent weir and partial flume a little bit because of that, to make sure we don't have head loss issues. But those will be included in this portion of the project. And then also minor things that will be going on. We had to add additional RAS pump in here. The RAS is what the sludge that comes out of the bottom of the tank. So it'll be a little small addition to the RAS station here. And the DO control, dissolved oxygen control, the blowers are in this building. We are going to put dissolved oxygen sensors in these tanks and automate the blower controls so that in the middle of the night, this plant is not manned 24/7. So in the middle of the night, when the flow is theoretically lower, it will automatically turn down the blower so that we're not just wasting electricity putting oxygen in there that doesn't need to be in there. Counterpoint to that, if it ever gets low in the middle of the night, it will automatically ramp it up so we don't come in the morning and find out, uh-oh, the DO's been low all night. So, very effective way of doing things, kind of standard practice now to automate blowers because just how expensive power can be when you're running these big pieces of equipment. So, all in all, a lot of improvements there, needed improvements, and working with the contractor and the design build team on getting some updated drawings for this. One advantage of having a design build contractor on site is when you find a sinkhole in the middle of your plant, you just get them to go at it instead of having to find somebody else to do it for you because they already got people and equipment on site. So that worked out about as well as could be, and is never a good place for a sinkhole. But if we were ever going to have a line collapse on the plant, that's probably the best line in the plant that could have collapsed because we already had another line we could bypass through.
Speaking of sinkholes, what's going on over on Frederica, fire station? And
Yes.
Colonial Drive?
Now, question on the fire station. I was told, I've not been over there. Did they get the repaving done at the fire station last night? Have you noticed that?
I hadn't been on that lane, I've only been on
Okay.
the outbound.
So they were doing some paving last night, and my understanding was it was supposed to be that first cut on Frederica.
I
Supposed to be.
crossed it last night, and I don't know how late it was they were doing it, but.
2 a.m. It was the middle of the night.
2, 3 a.m.
Okay, well, I wasn't up that time.
What caused the,
I'm looking at my eyelids.
There was leaks in a manhole that we've sealed up. We've now had the ability, and this has been very effective for us, we bought the equipment to actually inject grout instead of having to get contractors in here to do it. So we have guys go down and actually core through the manholes and inject grout to stop leaks. And we're also doing it in some of our wet wells. Now, some of our larger jobs, the equipment we have is just not set up to do that. But from these smaller jobs, we're able to inject grout ourselves. The one up by Colonial, what we believe has occurred is, if you remember when they freshly paved Frederica and then a week later we had a water main blowout in the worst timing on the planet, we think that the actual old transite line is collapsed and caused a void, and that's what's causing that to occur. But we're going to go do ground stabilization grouting in there as well to try to fill that up. We were waiting on the materials to get here, so I think they've done that. They may have done that last night as well. I know they had crews working overnight last night, so I don't remember if they were doing that one or the back construction entrance into Lake Cottages across from Harris Teeter. We had a tapping saddle fail on the force main right there, and yes, the stainless steel saddle had a hole in it, which that speaks highly to the amount of sewer gases in that area if it leaked through stainless steel. But they also poured that saddle in concrete, so they spent all night chipping away at concrete trying to get down to it so they could actually fix it. And then while they were down there, they noticed there's another one of these just a few feet off from that. So while they've got it open, they're going to take the other saddle off and put a high max on it so they don't have to go down on it again.
Legacy practice.
Legacy practice. We don't have records necessarily of when this occurred, but a little bit of a leak there, dry land release. But our crews, a true all hands on deck experiment. We actually had Crews out all night. The guys were exhausted, so we got some of our water crews to go out there and help them the next day. So,
So when we backfill that, will we use just sand or flowable fill, or what will be the requirement?
depending on Glynn County, my suspicion is they're going to want that flowable. Typically under Frederica or Demery or Mallory, they want it flowable. If we can get dredge sand, that usually packs pretty well too. So,
And so around the saddles, what will we do? Wrap it with polyethylene, just so it's serviceable later if we
The
have-
high maxes,
Yeah.
we'll just put it back with whatever backfill we put in there.
Yeah.
Oh, for, if we do flowable, yes.
Yeah.
If we wrap polyethylene, yes.
so the high maxes that we put in, they have rubber on the insides of them, so they seal when you tighten it down, versus the tapping saddles, it's just metal. So having that additional seal will help out. It's one of those things, never a dull day.
Well, good thing is we're addressing that one is gonna be particularly close to the roundabouts.
Yes.
Get that out of the way.
We are, since you bring that up, we have been in communications on the concept drawings, and so we're looking at some improvements we could do at the roundabout while they're there. Obvious improvements for odor control. We would be hoping we'll bring to you, once we get further into the project, a budget request for a project to actually install HDPE manholes at that intersection like we did at the East Beach and Demery roundabout. And currently, if you've ever looked at those manholes, they fall about 12 to 15 feet from where the force main discharges come in. There's one on the Sea Island side and one in the acceleration lane on Sea Island Road. The force main from pump station 2003 in Oglethorpe Park actually pumps to that and discharges into the top of that manhole and falls 15 to 17 feet. And the Sea Island discharge does the same. So what we are going to recommend is with these HDPE manholes is to actually make the connections on the bottom so it doesn't fall. It upwells in the bottom and the gases don't have a chance to strip out as it's interacting with the air.
Do a drop pipe outside of that.
Outside, drop into the bottom. So the most basic example I always tell people is kind of like pouring Coca-Cola in a glass. All those carbonation bubbles come out. Well, the same thing happens when you drop sewer 15 feet, and that's what's coming out. So those will be gasketed HDPE covers so nothing will get out, and it'll come in the bottom. And one thing we're considering, which is, in my opinion, a fantastic idea by Mr. Klein, we're going to have to relocate some assets in there because of just the shape of the roundabout, make sure we don't get. But anything near that intersection, Mr. Klein very intelligently suggested we go ahead and put those things in casings at this time while they're in there doing it, so we never have to dig in that intersection again. If something happens, we snatch it out of the casing and put a new pipe in. It's probably prudent and, you know, a good investment for us not to be out in the middle of that intersection. So obviously Glynn County's driving the bus on this project, but if they're in there, we want to take care of everything we can while we're there.
Let's move to the spreadsheets and the Gantt chart.
I got it. All right, spreadsheets here. You'll see these are the financials, should correspond. Maybe some timing differences on the financials you'll see at the Finance Committee. But all in all, the actual active projects we're spending money on list has gotten a little smaller. Of course, we got this year's list coming up. They just got added to this, so next month you'll see some things added here. Some of the design projects we've got ongoing. Down here at the bottom, we've been working closely with our consultant for Pump Station 4044. We mentioned earlier about the property acquisition there. That's about 90% complete on design, waiting on the parcel to be acquired before they finalize those documents. The North Mainland Water Loops project, if you remember, that's to connect 3 areas in the North Mainland where it's single fed and large areas have to be shut off in the event of a main break. That project, we are hopeful will be out for bid by the end of September because we have applied for Army Corps of Engineers nationwide permitting, and engineer believes we'll have that theoretically by the end of August. So we'll be able to put that out for bid in the very near future. Community Road, working with the redesign to low pressure in that area. They've submitted the updated PER, 30% on that, and they're not going to do a 60% set. They're going to go from 30 all the way to 90s on this. They had to get a little more survey done in the 30% phase. And the pump station 4002, 4001, and 3101, those are 3 separate projects listed here. Those are all being engineered under one contract with Kimley Horn, and we've received 90% drawings and specs on that, and we have had Mr. Klein and staff have had a review meeting with them on those 90% drawings, had some comments, went back, and they are actively going through the specifications as well to make sure those are all up to standards. So hopefully that will be out for bid this fall as well. May have to cut some things out of the scope there based off the original estimate on those 3 pump stations.
On this schedule, the Academy Creek, you say 8/31/22. Are they gonna really be, they won't be finished by then, will
They will not, but this does not include the change order that was approved today.
they? Now, what about like the Arco area? They've been delayed because of materials and everything, so it's not gonna be,
It is not going to be completed on time.
it's gonna be substantially past that period of time.
That is correct.
That's a pending change order possibly.
There's a pending change order for that on the delays for materials. A little bit of a discussion between us and the contractor on how much of their delays are actually material related.
Okay. All right.
And then on our EVA report, you're going to see a lot of changes in the first couple months of the year because we dropped last year's projects off and we add this year's projects, so things shift around a lot. But schedule performance at 86%, cost performance running about 6% below budget on these projects across the board. And then overall performance index of 0.92 for just kind of a goal there. A 1 means you're putting approximately the perfect amount of effort into the projects. So anything less than 1 means we're actually putting too much effort into our projects, but I'd rather be lower than not putting enough effort into those projects. So you'll see some of these dropped off from last month, and they do not go on this report until they actually spend money against them, because if not, it throws a lot of errors on the Excel spreadsheet and no one understands what's going on anymore. So I have to take those off until we actually spend money on the projects.
So if it's higher than 1, what does that mean?
On the cost, okay, if it's higher than 1 on the schedule, that means you are running ahead of schedule. If it's higher than 1 on the cost, it's meaning you're running below budget. If it's higher than 1 on the to complete performance index, it means you're not spending enough time managing your projects to make sure they're on time and on budget. And it is dollar weighted, so the larger projects do heavily influence this report. But currently with projects we've actually spent money on, you see we're at 66 million worth of active projects right now, plus some of the ones that we just brought online.
Any questions?
None.
I want to ask Ms. Roberts to introduce our new employee, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It would be my pleasure. As you know, we have been in the search for a new Director of Finance for quite some time now. We've searched across the country, and guess what? We found one in our own backyard. I'd like to welcome Mr. David M. Owens, CPA, to the staff. You'll be seeing his face in the Finance Committee meetings and the Commission meetings upcoming. Just wanted him to see the operation of the Facilities Committee today and just to get a general lay of the land. So, Mr. Owens, welcome. We're extremely happy to have you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome to the team.
When he showed up last week, I told him, you know the audit's due at the end of the month, right? So he showed up at a great time to get everything figured out in 1 solid month, so.
Absolutely. And just to note, before the Finance Committee, there's been a bit of a transition. As you may be aware, Ms. Frances Wilson was out for almost 8 weeks with some personal issues, but she has returned to the office now. But her return almost coincided with Mr. Owens' arrival. So the two of them have been working very closely together, and he's been a great help already in helping her gather some of the things for the audit that she needs. So he's already getting his feet wet.
Good. Glad to have you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, meeting's adjourned.
All right.